for joining us for another, we'll call it an episode of the Bigger Life Mastermind. Today, our special guest is none other than the talented Miss Nikki Miller. Nikki, thank you for being here with us. We're so excited to get into this today with you. Nikki was just sharing, for everyone here, Nikki was just sort of sharing her journey a little bit with us, and we kind of wanted to start there because she's effectively running and leading one of the largest teams in the nation, across the nation. And so we want to dive into that, understand how that's possible, how you've managed to get to this point. We know you're co-hosting the One Thing podcast as well. And Nikki, for all purposes, you are just doing incredible things and taking over the real estate world. We saw that you got celebrated by Inman yesterday, so congratulations on that as well.
Oh,
And
thank you.
we're super excited to kind of dig into what you do and how you've kept that big life going, and continuing to in a down market, in a challenging time, you're still changing the entire real estate industry with your tremendous growth. So thank you first off for being here. Thank you for being a part of what we're doing here in Canada. You're talking to the top 10% of the nation today, which is really incredible. We're happy to have all you folks here with us as well. And so let's jump into it, Nikki. I mean, start with that. You're here today doing all these incredible things. Did it start that way? Was your initial vision to kind of take over the world?
I wish I could tell you it was. I think I knew a lot of potential lived inside of me. And yet I always count my lucky stars, or whatever you believe in, that I found KW very early. And without it, like, I'm not 100% sure where I would be, what chaos I would have ensued had I not had the direction and the mentorship that I've been lucky to have. But I've always been driven. Like, I get asked that question a lot. I think I always knew that I was meant to do great things if I could point my energy and if I could point my direction. I had a mentor once say to me, Nikki, you got to learn to light up the world without setting it on fire. And that's sort of been my quest as an individual, especially as a young person. So I sort of grew up in the world of real estate. I started when I was 22 years old, and I was really hungry. I wanted to make an impact. I wanted to build something great. And I thought, like many 22-year-olds, I thought that I didn't need any help. I thought that I knew everything and that I was just going to go and crush it. Like, there was no rules. And there's a benefit to that, right? I tell young people often that there's a great benefit to being young in business because you don't know what you don't know. And sometimes that can help you by way of, like, not buying into any limiting beliefs. People would tell me, oh, I started in a market in Northern California that at the time still in the top couple markets in the nation, in the US, but at the time was the #1 market in the US. Most expensive, most difficult to penetrate. And here I am, 22 years old, didn't have a sphere of influence, had just moved there, didn't know anybody. And everyone was like, kid, you don't have a shot. Like, you're not going to be able to do anything here. And I worked my tail off. And I wish I could tell y'all that I had like a Cinderella story and I was the rookie of the year. I wasn't. I sold one house my first year. Like, literally in my first 12 months, I sold one house. But I door knocked 358 days that year out of 365. And in year 2, I was the #1 individual agent in our market because of all that work that I had done in year 1. And so I would tell you that my special skills that I'm just probably a little too stupid to give up, right? Like, I just was not like one of those agents that was doing these things and thought, well, it's not working, I might as well stop. I was like, nope, I'm going to keep doing this forever if that's what it takes. So I did, and I was really successful my second year. And then I remember kind of hitting my ceiling of achievement. And I always say, like, everybody hits these ceilings a little differently, or rather I should say they feel different. I see I have a door knocker in the crowd. I love that. And so I hit my ceiling of achievement. And the first ceiling that I hit was in the number of units that I was able to sell. And I always say, like, but make no mistake, I've butt my head up against every ceiling that exists. But the first one I hit was the number of units. Some people hit it in income, right? Like, you're just making the same amount of money year over year. Some people hit it in energy, right? Like, I'm just falling in love with this business because I hate this. I hate all the other jobs that I have to do. Some people fall out of, some people hit ceiling of achievement in time. Like, it's a little different for everybody, right? My first ceiling was the number of transactions I could do. So I went into my team leader one day and I said, hey, I've hit my ceiling and I'm not really sure what I do now. And she said, all right, well, now we're going to get you a coach, and we're going to teach you how to hire people, and we're going to teach you how to fire people, and we're going to teach you how to manage overhead, and we're going to teach you how to build a database, and we're going to teach you how to do marketing. And I was like, oh, no, I don't think you heard me right. I'm out of time. I'm completely out of time. And this sounds a lot like another job. And she said, well, this is the way it's always been done. And that was a real theme for me growing in business. Like I just kept hearing like, this is how it's always been done. This is how everybody else does it. These are the rules, so to speak. And as a serial and born entrepreneur, truly, like I've just always believed rules are, what do they say in Pirates of the Caribbean? It's more like guidelines, right? Like they're just not real. There's not really any rules here. And so I tried her way for 6 months and I failed miserably. Again, not the Cinderella story. And I went back into her office 6 months later. I said, hey, thanks so much for all these classes and for the coach and all this stuff, but I don't want to do any of this. First of all, I should not be responsible for anyone other than myself. I'm like 23 at the time. I'm like, I don't want to take on an overhead. I don't want to manage another human being. I don't want to do any of this. Somebody before me has figured this out, and I would like to just pay them to do it. And she said, well, you can't do that. Like that's not possible. And I said, well, then what are my options? And she said, well, you could join a team. But I had built a pretty significant brand at that point, and joining a team meant putting that brand under them and no longer having it exist. I said, no, I don't want to go that route. Alternatively, it was you could do it yourself. And I was like, definitely don't want to do that. Tried that, hated it. And I said, well, what are my options if I don't want to do either of those? And then she sort of smiled at me and she said, well, then I guess you just stay where you are. And what she didn't have to say is that I would suffer the consequences of staying where I was. And so sort of by force, I ended up building this out myself. I built a very successful expansion team through California and then became the team leader of what at the time was the largest KW in California. And it was there that I realized that this was not a unique problem to me. Every individual agent ever was having the same challenges, hitting the same ceilings. And when they would come into my office, guess what I would tell them? Guess which options I would give them? I would say, well, you can join a team, you can build it yourself, or you can stay exactly where you are. And one day we're still dear friends today. And this is such a pivotal moment. I had an agent look up at me and said, if I have to go any of those routes, I will quit. And you are my leader, and I'm depending upon you to figure this out for me. So I will look forward to what you figure out. And I was like, oh my God. And so I left that position with this thought in my head. And this was all during COVID, and I had actually just had my daughter. So like I was kind of stuck at home, like really stuck at home with an infant and not much to do. And so I just had a bunch of time to think. And I just started mulling over like, what are all my agents asking for? And also, what did I wish that I had? And what I wanted was all the economies of scale, all the support, all the benefits, all the infrastructure of having a team around me. But I didn't want to give up my brand. I didn't want to be on a team financial model. I didn't want to give up my production. And alternatively, I didn't want to have to manage the people. And I didn't want to have to manage the overhead and do it myself. And I said, well, what if I could just put all that together? Like, is that too much to ask? And the industry said yes. So I came up with this crazy idea that we could put all these things together. And trust me, y'all, I had so many people that I really respect in real estate, people that I have learned a lot from who've been mentors to me. I came to them with this idea. I was like, I think I'm going to do this. And they're like, no, nobody builds stuff for individual agents. Don't do that. That's a terrible idea. Teams all the way, teams. Do not touch that. You're going to fail and you're going to be the laughing stock of real estate. And I was like, I think I'm really going to do this. And you guys might be right. Like I think I'm going to try this out. So I launched my first company, the Lead Syndicate, in January of 2021, which was a first of its kind leverage platform, very specifically and exclusively designed for the individual agent. And it took off like wildfire because it turned out there was a lot of agents just like me out there who were just looking for another way to grow. And I grew that really fast. And the expected consequence of growing that was that we had agents who were growing their businesses double, triple, quadruple digit percentages year over year. And I became very smart in how to support the individual. And I also became much smarter than I already was in the world of real estate, right? If you pay attention, you'd have to be a fool to interact with as many agents as I do and not know what works and what doesn't. Like you'd have to be an absolute fool to not understand the trends of success. And so once you understand those, they become very scalable. And so that's what we started to do. And the other unexpected consequences that we had were we were converting leads at the highest level. We were the number number one converters in Op City, number one converters in Ojo. And we were also on average with those lead aggregators that we had partnered with, providing a better client experience than the average agent. And so they started coming to me saying, hey, what are you doing? Why are your agents doing so much better than everybody else? And I said, oh, that's easy. We're doing a lot of it for them, right? We actually give them time back so they can go and do what matters most, so they can go be an agent while all these other things still happen. And so that started the conversation with Ojo and Movoto, who approached me almost a year ago now and said, hey, what would it look like if we put our resources together? And then we announced about 2 months ago that they purchased the lead syndicate. Together, we launched Lever by Movoto. Very similar business model with more resources and a more direct connection to the consumer. So that sort of brings me to like today, to what's going on right now. I have no idea if that's what you were looking for, but that's the history.
Nikki, that was incredibly detailed, and what a journey, what a ride you've been on. You know, for the team leaders that are on, we've got a number of team leaders that have made it as well, and OPs that are on as well. I heard you say you didn't really love the rules, and you kind of set out to break them all. How did that flip for you once you became a team leader and had to kind of be in that environment? Now you're the one that's giving the rules. What was that transition like for you?
I think that I didn't succeed very traditionally as a team leader because of that, because I fought against myself and I fought against my natural skill set for a while before I realized that if you flip the coin of your great strength, like whatever your great strength is, if you flip that over, it's just the mirror of whatever your great weakness is. And so as a team leader, or as an agent, when we try to stuff people into this box and say, this is the way it's always been done, this is how you have to do it, it turns off the thinking part of our brain that says, let me logically work through what I'm good at and what I like to do. And so while there are models and rules that you can follow that will consistently breed success, and you have to know those and understand those and implement those, you also have to listen to yourself. And I often say, when somebody tells you a model or somebody tells you a way of doing something, that's their truth. They know that to be successful. They know that to be true. But that doesn't make your instincts or your capabilities or your ideas any less valuable. And if you believe in something, like you know it in your bones, you need to go and follow that and sort it through. If for nothing else, to say, yep, I was definitely right. That did not, or you were definitely right. Like that did not work. That was not the way to do it. But every time I infringed upon my own instincts, every time I paid for it. Every time I tried to build the way that somebody else told me to do it, as opposed to what I felt was right, I paid for it. It took me longer, or I paid for it in money, or I paid for it in time, or whatever that looked like. So the people that we lead are smart, capable business people, and our job is to shepherd them through some of those decisions and through thinking through what the potential outcomes or consequences are as they make these decisions in their business. But there really are no rules. And had I listened to everybody who told me I was crazy and my business model wouldn't work, there would be hundreds of agents out there who aren't getting the results that they're getting, who aren't getting the support that they're getting. And I would have paid for it in my own belief of myself, and they would have paid for it because they wouldn't have the support that they have, right? And so I think that, yes, you have to learn models. You have to learn how success has happened before you, right? I want everyone to hear that, like, I pay attention and I am very, very well read. I read a ton. I have a bunch of coaches in my life, a bunch of mentors in my life. I am constantly learning. But I'm also not going to turn my own brain off, and I'm going to ask myself, how does this apply? What trends do I see? And based off my intuition and my instinct, where do I believe that this is actually right, wrong, or could we change it a little bit in a way that's going to work better for me or better for everybody that I'm leading? So I think, yes, you have to have models, but you also have to pay attention, and you also have to be able to think for yourself and for your people. And I'll give you a great example. Like when I was a team leader, your job is to recruit, right? And so the way everybody would recruit is they would have one-on-one meetings. Like there was a number of one-on-one meetings that I had to have on a monthly basis. Well, anyone who knows me knows that, like, I'm a DC, right? I don't love people. I like love people, but I don't love spending a lot of one-on-one time with people. I am not well-rounded. I have sharp edges, right? Like I don't like to be in one-on-one meetings all day. It's not where I'm best suited. And so when I took the team leader role, people were like, you're gonna die. Like this is not what you should do. And I said, I'm gonna do it in a way that works for me, in a way that captures my natural skill set. Well, my natural skill set is training and teaching and guiding people in the front of the room. And so what I would do is I would get a group of people in a room and we would mastermind, and I would just convert them from that mastermind. So I wasn't having 40 appointments one-on-one a month, but I was having masterminds where I was getting 100 people in the room. They were seeing what they could have by way of being part of our organization, and we would convert them after that. So we're getting the same result. In fact, I got better results. I'm in the Team Leader Hall of Fame, and we had the #1 recruiting record for a long time. And we were getting the results. It just approached a little differently. And so had I not had an OP who gave me the freedom to do that, I probably would have fizzled out of the role really fast. And I would have felt like I was failing when I just wasn't succeeding the way everybody wanted me to succeed, if that makes sense.
Great share. That makes perfect sense. And I think you can apply that like across the board, right? Whether you're
Everywhere, yeah.
attracting to your organization, we got a lot of team owners on the call as well, solos on the call as well. It sounds like either way, your real big encouragement is tap into your superpower.
Yes, because here's the challenge. Like, there's not one way to be successful. There are a lot of ways to be successful. There are underlying principles that don't change, but how those principles get applied can change, and how you use them can change. And I was just on a podcast yesterday, and I was being interviewed, and they were asking me a very similar question. And they said, "Well, your communication style is really direct. So is that a challenge for you when you're in one-on-ones?" And I said, "Yes, but it's a strength for me in other places." Right? So where I am strong, I am also, again, if we just flip that coin, like, you'll know your weakness. And so as a leader, you have to surround yourself with people who have other skill sets. I'll give you a great example. In my organization, I never want to go to like a birthday party. I never want to have lunch. Like, I never want to celebrate because I'm busy. Like, I will never think to celebrate your 1-year anniversary in our organization. I just won't. Like, it's just absolutely not on my radar. And by the way, I'm that way in my personal life too. My husband's always like, "It's our anniversary day." I'm like, "Yes, it is." And I just don't remember it, right? And yet my director of operations in my organization knows everybody's birthday, everybody's kid's birthday. He reminded me on my birthday that it was my birthday. He was like, "Today is your birthday. You're going to get a bunch of texts today. Make sure you respond." Like, that's who he is in our organization, right? And so you need the person who's going to drive the part of your organization that you want to exist, but you're not necessarily good at, right? By the way, you better believe that my team wants me when we're talking about operations at scale, when we're having to get in front of big crowds and have conversations. Like, they're like, "Go do that. We'll do all this other stuff so that we can free you up to go do that where you are most effective in the organization." So it's not to say any of these skills are better or worse. They all have strengths. They all have weaknesses. And you have to know who you are, because a couple of things will happen if you start to behave outside of yourself too often, right? And by the way, this is not to say I will not accept with somebody, "Oh, this is just who I am." Stop that. Like, that, don't do that. Because that's not going to work for you in your growth, right? This is who I am doesn't work for me when I'm intercommunicating with people, when I'm helping them to become a better version of themselves. I have to communicate how other people want to communicate, which means that I've had to work on my communication style when I'm in one-on-ones. When I'm in an environment like this, where I can't communicate how all of you want to communicate, I'm just going to do it naturally. But if I'm in a one-on-one with someone, then I am absolutely paying attention to how they like to communicate, how they like to receive information, how they like to be coached. My entire focus is on them. So don't fall into the trap of, "Well, this is who I am. These are my strengths and weaknesses." That's wrong. And what I would offer is that you have to figure out who you are and stay in that lane as much as you can. Stay in your strength zone as much as you can. Because where I see burnout happen more often than not, and I'm not a huge fan of this phrase, because I don't know about y'all, but I'm like a very visual learner. And when I think of burnout, I think of a candle like burning all the way to the end, and then it's just dead. Like, it just ceases to exist. So when someone tells me that they're burned out, I'm like, "Are you dead? Are you burned all the way to the bottom? Are you about to die?" Because that's what I think of, right? And yet what most people, I think, are implying is that I'm behaving outside of myself. Because I want you to think about something that you you've been in love with, whether it was a person or a company or a job or a startup, like whatever it was, think about something that you were just completely in love with. You don't get burned out with that. Like you will work tirelessly. You will spend time on it tirelessly because you are in love with it, right? And so when someone's feeling burned out, I would simply offer that my experience is two things are happening. Number one, you're solving the same stupid problems over and over and over and over again. That's usually number one. And number two, you're behaving outside of your strength zone, right? So I'll start to discover what stupid problems are you resolving for the 100th time, and where are you behaving outside of your strength zone, where you need to just get back into what you are supposed to do inside this organization, right? And by the way, this doesn't mean, for example, I would rather die than sit in front of a spreadsheet and do our numbers. Like, I just hate it. It's my least favorite thing to do. But I need to understand it to be able to drive our organization. So again, none of this is permission to just forget it, right? I'm going to go all into my strengths, forget about all my weaknesses. It doesn't work like that. But what I am saying is that where you should be spending the majority of your time is in wherever your strength zone is.
Incredible. Nikki,
Very, very
we've got a hand up. Colin, before you jump in, I know you
No,
got
go
a
ahead.
couple of burning questions. We do have Paul Fitzpatrick had his hand up. Just gonna open it up. Paul, what do you got for us?
Hey, Paul.
So thank you. Hello, Nikki. And fascinating. The last 10 minutes, you've nailed so many things. And so the thing that jumps to my mind is, okay, and I kind of think of myself as reasonably insightful, that I can figure out what my strengths and weaknesses are.
Yeah.
But do you perform a SWOT analysis on yourself, or have sit in with people to do that? Because so many things that you said nailed the way I feel about things, and I'm going, okay, where do I go for the next steps on that?
Yeah, there's a couple ways that you can do this. Number one, y'all got to get yourselves a coach, right? And I don't swear allegiance to any coaching company. There are a lot of great ones out there, but I've paid more for coaching year over year than I ever have in my life. Like, I look at how much I pay my coach today, it makes me want to vomit. But he is exorbitantly helpful in my life, and he is the one who really helps me understand when I'm starting to scoot outside of my strength zone, or when I'm questioning my strength zone. Very helpful. If you don't have someone like that in your life, use a trusted resource. Like, I would not use a partner. They are, in my world at least, they are not the trusted resource. Not because your partners aren't amazing. I imagine they all are, if you have one in your life. But they love you, and their job is to love you. And so they're not going to tell you the hard stuff, right? And so you want to believe that your strength is X, Y, and Z, and your partner's going to be like, that is your strength. You're so good at that. And they're like, no, it's not, but I don't want to fight with you. Right. So please don't use your partner. Use someone else, like a leader in your organization, like a team leader, like a trusted colleague, like a friend, who you feel like might be able to answer this question. Just say, what is my strength? Like, what do you feel like if you could tell somebody, here's what I do really well, here's when I'm in the zone, what would you say that is? Where I would also compare that is, it's very rare that you're going to have a strength that does not match your energy. And here's what I mean by that. When I'm in my strength zone, I could do it all freaking day, like all day. You don't have to pay me for it. You don't have to tell me I'm good at it. I know, right? Like, I'm there, I'm in it, I'm focused. You can't get me out. I don't get bored. I don't lose energy. I'm pumped to be doing that. And I will do it all day long. That's your strength zone. Wherever you can do that, that's your strength zone. Does that answer that question, Paul?
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
Nikki, and again, thank you for answering these questions. And I know when we were, I think it was both Jason Abrams and Jay Papasan, when we asked, who we should have on our mastermind, both of them without a beat, they mention your name. Gary Keller, I know he's mentioned you a few times on stage. And for you to build your business lead syndicate, which was before the merger, obviously you saw a gap in the market, and you addressed that gap. The people on this call today are within our top 10% in all of Canada. as they're starting to see gaps in their market to build out auxiliary businesses, what are some of the pointers you would give to them?
I would say if you see a gap, it exists, right? Like I think often people see the opportunity, or I always sort of laugh to myself, like I can't tell you all how many times people have asked me, it comes off in a couple different ways. Like number one, it'll be, why hasn't anyone, like they hear about what I do and they're like, why hasn't anybody done this? I'm like, I don't know. I wish they had, I would have used it, right? And the second thing is, oh, I had this idea. I should have done this. I'm like, but you didn't. And success will be reserved for those that choose to take action. So if you see a gap, it exists, right? If there is a gap in your business, or if there is a gap in your market, it exists, and it exists for other people too. We very rarely have problems in a vacuum. If it's a problem for us, it's a problem for others. Every great business you can think of is a solution to a problem, whether you knew you had it or whether you didn't know you had it. Doesn't matter, but it's a solution, right? And so if it would be a solution for you, it would be a solution for everybody, or for a lot of people, right? So you have to believe that, and then you just need to go do it. You cannot pontificate about it any longer. You cannot perfect the plan any longer. You cannot spend any more time trying to build a perfect business plan. I always laugh when someone's like, can you review my business plan? I'm like, no, start, come back to me in 6 months, and then we'll review your business plan. Because I cannot give you an idea of what you should be doing when you have not tried, right? And one of the biggest questions I get asked is around like scale, because we scaled so fast. And I believe that it is such a detriment to business owners, this idea that we have to come up with some type of perfect solution, or there's some perfect way to scale. What's the only way to know if you have a hole in your bucket, a little pin-size hole? It's to fill it with water. The only way for you to know whether a business will work is to start the business. The only way for you to know if something scales is to start scaling it. That's the only way. You cannot figure that out ahead of time. You find the perfect plan by implementing the imperfect plan. You will find the best path forward by beginning. But so many of us are stuck at zero, trying to figure out how to just begin. And there isn't a perfect way. You're not going to find it. So just start, and you'll be much smarter after you've tried a few things.
Thank you for that.
I was gonna say she left you speechless, Colin. That was big, Nikki.
No, she nailed that. She nailed that. What does Sandy have?
Thanks, Colin. Hey, Nikki, thanks so much for this. I noticed you were relatively or fairly active on social media in terms of like your own personal branding and personal brand awareness. I think there's lots of various size teams on this call, and how are you very intentional around that personal brand and how you integrate that within your perhaps multiple businesses and companies that you're involved with? And how would you advise others to go about navigating that side of the business, the marketing, branding, mainly personal as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think I even became aware of it until maybe about a year ago. My personal brand was sort of naturally growing, and I wish I could tell you it was a really intentional process on my part, but it really wasn't. Social media for me has always been sort of like a diary, so to speak. Like it's my way of sharing what I'm learning, or what my thoughts are, or what my experiences are. And frankly, if y'all like it, that's awesome. And if y'all don't like it, I don't care. I'll still share it, right? Like it's my way of just sharing what I feel inside, and for people to get to see that on the outside. And it wasn't until very recently that that like people would stop me at a family reunion or at a big real estate event and say like, oh gosh, I love following you on social. This thing really helped me, or this was really insightful. And I'm like, oh my God, people like, you look at that stuff, like you care. Like it's still hard for me to wrap my head around the idea that anyone like gives a rip what I have to say. And so for me, it's really been sort of an authentic journey of just sharing where I am. And I would offer that like my number one value is authenticity. And my biggest sort of challenge with social media is that everybody's so full of shit. And I don't know, sorry, I should have asked if I'm okay to curse on here. Everybody's just so full of it. And I was talking with a friend of mine, Morgan Housel, who wrote Psychology of Money. And he said something that like just ingrained in my soul. He said, Nikki, people don't interact on social media. They just perform for one another. And so my challenge to myself has been to not perform, to share where I am, to share what I'm learning, to share who I am, to share the good, to share the hard, and to share my experiences in all of that and how I evolve through all of that. Because I think one of the biggest challenges is, you know, when you follow, I call them like the finance bros of social media, who are like, just do this and you're going to be a billionaire. Like, no, you're not. It's so hard, y'all. Building businesses is hard. Growing wealth is hard. And it takes a long time. And all these people who get on social media and talk about their sort of end result that is what we get to see, like they're just full of it. Anyone who has actually built a business can tell you, and I can tell you, there's even people in this, you know, ecosystem in the world of KW or in the world of real estate who have huge followings on social, and I know them personally. I'm like, you're a mess. Like nobody should be following you. Like nobody should be following anything you say because you're a hot mess. Like you should not be giving advice to anybody. But because we perform for one another, it's easy to feel like you're behind or easy to feel like you're less than. And so I think that it's social media is such an amazing tool and such a beautiful thing in so many ways. But for me, my challenge to myself in building my brand is to just really be authentic and really share where I am, and hopefully in that journey, people will get to learn alongside of me or along the way. And it's just a privilege when people connect with me on there and say like, I learned this, or I got this from this, but you know, above all, my favorite thing is when I get to meet people in person. They're like, wow, you're like super cool and nice. I'm like, yeah, like I try to not be an a-hole, and try to treat people well. That's the job that we all have. And for social to just be a place for us to further connect in that journey.
Nikki, you're our first non-KW exec, so you can swear. It's okay. But I want to jump into, you know, we've got a few different things around like that team growth that you've had, agent attraction that you're doing. We know you're popular on social media as well. Are you seeing different things in agents today? Like for the business owners on the call that are building their brands, we've got solos on as well that are doing incredible things. But as
Yeah.
you're building that brand and building out that business, is the challenge different? Because we're hearing a lot of different people say it's actually just more of the same. Where do you fall on that?
Are you talking about like in regards to building a brand or in regards to building a business?
I'd say in regards to building your real estate business, your sales side of things.
Okay, like what's the challenge in building that brand?
Yeah,
Sorry,
what are
I
you
want to make
seeing
sure I
there?
understand the question that I
Oh, that's
actually
okay.
answer it.
What are you seeing in like building out, you know, sales teams, building out the business? If you were to go back to like where you started to where you are today, is it all still the same? Would you do it the same again?
Yeah, I would. I think the fundamentals of how to be successful haven't changed, but I do think the amount of noise has changed. And what I mean by that is when I was growing in the real estate business, technology obviously was there, like social was a thing at that point. This was a little over a decade ago now, right, that I started. And yet it wasn't what it is today. So I wasn't wasting time on like, well, maybe I'll try to do it this way. Maybe I'll try to do it that way. And the biggest challenge I see with agents, whether it's a team, whether it's an individual, doesn't really matter. But the biggest challenge is they just don't give anything long enough for it to actually work. Like we even see this in our organization. Somebody comes to me 30 days after they've joined us and they're like, you suck and this sucks and everything sucks because my life and business has not changed. I'm like, well, honey, it didn't take you 30 days to get here. It's not going to take me 30 days to get you out. Like it doesn't, like you got to sit in this for 6 months or so of it being really challenging and it being a little uncomfortable because you sat in it for 4 years of it being challenging and uncomfortable. You just didn't call it that. Right. And so I don't think the rules, like the fundamentals of success have changed in the world of real estate. I think how we can implement those fundamentals has changed, if that makes sense. And what I would say the biggest challenge I'm seeing to people is that they are just ping-ponging strategies all the time, or they're not actually building a strategy that gets them to where they want to go. I finally stopped teaching business planning because I like my soul couldn't take it anymore, because every time it would go a little something like this. I'd have a whole day of business planning, of like really getting into the granular process of walking people through how to business plan, bringing in extras, helping them to understand this very conceptually and very detailed for their own business. And then sure enough, somebody would come to me in the hallway and they would say like, Nikki, this has been amazing. I got a big goal this year. I'm going to double my business. And I'm like, that's amazing. What are you going to do differently from last year to double your business? And they're like, nothing, but I'm going to double my business. I'm like, that's not how that works. Like, that's not how it works. If you want to double your business, you either need to put in double the effort and you need to put in double the intake of leads, or you need to add additional agents, right? Like, there's a bunch of different ways to do that. But so many people are saying, well, I'm just going to do the same thing, but magically I'm going to double my business. Nope. You got to have a plan that actually gets you to that place. And I see this all the time in real estate. So I think that like I said, fundamentals haven't changed. How you can implement this fundamentals has changed, but I don't think enough people are really having a realistic conversation with themselves if they're actually giving the output that they need to be in order to be able to get to that result. And if they've been doing it long enough to know whether it works or not.
Okay. Nikki, you had mentioned that, and I wrote this down, success is reserved for those who take action. Could you tell us a time where you didn't take the required action and it costs you financially? And how would you advise us to take action even in the moments when we're scared because of the monies we have to invest or the uncertainty?
Yeah, I mean, it's all the things that I didn't, it's all the things I didn't do that haunt me, honestly, which has been such a driver for me as I've grown, in doing the things, like in starting the business or implementing the idea or whatever it is. But truly, it's all the things that I didn't do that haunt me, and all the things that I didn't buy that haunt me. Not in the way of like, you know, I always think like, as a female, like one of the rules of shopping I always give my friends is like, hey, if you don't buy it, like a year from now, you're gonna still be thinking about it. I got a couple of those. Like, there's a jacket that I left at the store that I should have bought. I still think about it to this day. But I think about that by way of investment too, right? And I can give you countless examples of this, but the biggest ones are in investments. The house that I didn't buy, that I underwrote it, and I was like, well, what if this happens in the market? And what if, and what if, and what if? And I just what ifed myself out of a great opportunity, right? So you have to understand your criteria for making decisions, and then you need to just make the decision before this gets in the way. I've started moving and acting before my brain can get involved, right? Before my limiting beliefs can come up, and before I can talk myself out of it, I just do it. Like I send the text, I make the call, I send the email, I sign the contract before I can talk myself out of it. Not irresponsibly, right? But once I know that it's the right path, or I intrinsically believe that that's the right thing to do, I'm just going to take the first step toward it. Because if I don't, historically in my life, I'll wait and I'll wait and I'll wait and I'll wait, and then I just won't do it. So if it matters to me and I believe it's the right opportunity, or I believe it's what should happen next, then I'm going to take action on it. And like I said, there's countless examples of this: businesses that I didn't buy, businesses that I didn't sell, investment properties that I didn't buy, people that I like. I want to phrase this better than people that I didn't buy, but like people I didn't invest in. Like, oh, they're too expensive, right? Like hiring them would be too expensive. And I look backwards and I said they would have been great. Like, they would have changed my business at that time. But countless examples of this. So what I would offer is you have to build criteria for yourself for making decisions. One of the best criteria I've started asking myself as I've grown is like, what's the absolute worst case scenario? The way I started the Lead Syndicate is, what was the absolute worst case scenario? When everybody told me I was crazy and this thing would never work, I just asked myself, what is the absolute worst case scenario? Well, worst case scenario was that it actually didn't work. And by the way, if it hadn't worked, nothing would have happened. Like nobody would have put me up on stage and be like, everybody laugh at Nikki who started this business and it didn't work. Like, it just would have died. Like, it wouldn't have mattered. There's plenty of things I've done that didn't work and nobody even knows about it. The only person that really knows about it is me and my coach. So the absolute worst case scenario in that was I invested a little money and it didn't work. Like, that was the worst case scenario. And then I could look backwards and say, I've never been disappointed when I tried something and it didn't work. And I could look back and say, at least I followed my intuition, at least I followed my gut. But every time I've done that, it's worked. Maybe not as fast as I would have wanted it to, maybe not as well as I would have wanted it to, but it did head me in the right direction.
Thank you for that, Nikki.
Nikki, you mentioned, so we know that you sold the company now to Ojo there, and I'm curious what your thoughts are on there's not many real estate teams that end up being sold in this business, but do you think there's a path to building a team that could be sold, maybe in some version of a way that you sold your company, or what would a path to that look like if you were to give advice on what we should be thinking about if that was a plan one day, perhaps? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, not many real estate teams get sold because not many people build them to sell. Right? I had a mentor very early on in my, like before I even was in the world of buying and selling businesses, when I didn't even know what this meant. He told me, Nikki, if it's not built for sale, it's built to fail. If it's not built for sale, it's built to fail. And by the way, that doesn't mean that you ever have to sell it. You might hold on to this thing forever. But if you don't build it to sell, i.e. the systems can be translated, they can be implemented, they could be handed off. It's actually a business. It doesn't only depend on you, then it's just built to fail, right? Businesses get bought and sold all the time. I've bought many a business. I've sold a few businesses, right? I try to buy more than I sell, right? But ultimately, this is a very common occurrence. But in the world of real estate, we don't build them for sale. We build them around us, right? And the challenge with that is that when it's solely built around you and it's not replicatable and it's not scalable and it's not handoffable, then it's not built for sale. That's not a business, that's a job, right? And so you have to hand off that job. You don't get to sell that job, right? So ultimately, I think the reason most people don't sell their teams is because they're just not built to sell those teams, or they don't think about it, right? It hasn't really been a conversation for people that they instead let all of this hard work die, which breaks my heart. They let all of this hard work die, and simply because they didn't pursue trying to sell it, right? I buy real estate businesses all the time. I've bought countless businesses, databases. I can't even count how many anymore. Dozens, maybe close to 100. A lot of them, and I pursue them because they won't pursue me. Right. And so when I know someone's getting ready to retire or getting ready to shut down, like I see all the signs, it's very obvious. And I'll have people who will come to me and say, I want to retire. Maybe you can help me. And I'll say, well, you can't join the lever now. You can't join us because we're designed to help you grow. Right. But I will buy your business. I'll buy your database from you. And they're like, yes, I'm in. Right. And that gives them the freedom to go on and do whatever they want to do and still get income from it. Most people, like I said, the two biggest things I see, they just haven't thought of it. But the biggest one is they don't build it to sale.
That's great.
Let's see if we have
Colin,
some
you wanna-
questions. Let's see if we have some questions from those listening.
Gary
How
wants
to
to know how you
evaluate the database, Gary's asking.
So sorry, what was the
There's a
question?
question there, how to evaluate the database.
How to like evaluate it by way of how much is it worth?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, there's a million ways to do this. I don't think that there's like a science for it. I've seen it done a lot of different ways. I can tell you what I typically do. It is a very rare occasion that I will hand somebody money for a database. Because y'all are salespeople, and you're full of it. And so somebody will say like, my database is worth millions. I'm like, probably not worth millions. It's probably worth a couple thousand. And so if that's the case, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pay you for a result. That's how I buy most businesses anyway. It's very rare that I will hand money over for a business. I will usually use some form of seller financing. If your business is as good as you say it is, you're going to get paid back. Don't you worry about a thing. Right. And so I use the same principle in purchasing a database. I have bought a couple databases, but like I said, that's a couple out of like close to 100. So, and it's not the dollar figure that you think it is. And so if I'm an agent and I really have a great database, I'd actually rather have a percentage of sale over time. That's what I recommend most people do. But those are the two biggest ones I see. Either I'm going to hand over money, or I'm going to like pay you forever, or I'm going to pay you on a tiered model so I don't have to pay you anymore. Those are the few that are most common. Melody asked, or Brian asked, what's the most important thing in building a brand? I think the most important thing in building a brand is to like really be authentic. I think a lot of people try to build brands around something that they are not. There's a couple people that are popping to mind. I try not to go on social media that much, but like I keep seeing them trying to build these brands that they're trying to be very strategic about what they're building, and it's not who they are. And if you know them, you know that. And the challenge with that is not only that the world of social media is great because it allows you to get in front of a lot of people at once, but it's also not so great because it shares information really fast. And what I mean by that is that it sort of leveled the playing field in the world of business, because you can't lie to your consumer anymore like you used to be able to. I'm not saying that was ever the right thing to do, but a lot of people did, right? Like they could sell snake oil, and it would take so long for the information to pass that they could make a bunch of money and then just move on to the next snake oil that they were going to sell, right? Social media has eliminated that, right? You guys see these companies all the time go on blast because somebody on social media had a bad experience and happens to have a great following, right? So I think that when you are inauthentic, when you don't behave the way that you actually are, well, then somebody meets you in person or somebody interacts with you and the story gets told like that person's full of it. That's not who they are, right? And so I think you have to be authentic. You have to understand what you stand for. It's okay to change over time because people do change, right? But you can't be like the picture of health one day and then be like, oh, it's okay to eat chili cheese fries and burgers the next day, because it confuses your audience. It's like you have to be who you are and be very authentic in who that is. If you're going on a health journey, you can share about that, right? But just stay very close to who you are and what you actually believe in. And above all, you will just stop building your brand eventually if it's too far outside of who you are. Like you just will stop posting because you will run out of things to say because you don't know what to say because that's not who you are, right? So be authentic. It'll make it easy for you to build the brand. Sam asked, what's the most important habit that you've implemented in your day-to-day life that have made the most impact in your success? I've got a lot of them for sure, but I can give you the couple that I like started with, which I would still say are the most impactful. The first one is waking up early in the morning. I started this before my daughter was born, and I assure you this was not an easy journey for me. I am not a morning person. Like my friends, we share a house with some friends in the mountains, and they literally draw straws about who's going to wake me up. Like I am just not a morning person. I am not full of sunshine and rainbows when I first wake up. So it really took a long time for me to wake up early and took a lot of work. And now I'm very grateful for that habit, because I always say I need a couple hours to just get some things done before I hear the word mommy. And it's really important for me to have that time to center myself in the morning. So I would say that's a big one. The second one that has been extremely impactful for me is building out my plan the night before. I will not walk into a day without a very clear idea, very clear outlined picture of what it is that I need to achieve that day. When I walk into a day, I know exactly what I'm there to do. I know exactly what my priorities are. I know exactly who I need to talk to. My day is planned the night before. And this doesn't need to be some huge, like esoteric, I'm going to spend an hour figuring this out. It takes me 5 minutes. 5 minutes. I look at my calendar. I look how much time I have. I look at what I need to do based off my overall goals. And then I outline the 3 or 4 things I need to execute the next day. So I walk into the day with that to make sure that I don't have to figure it out in the morning, waste energy. And the biggest habits that I've built that have been impactful for me are related to things like that. Like I lay out my clothes the night before. I lay out my daughter's clothes the night before. I plan my food for the week. Like as many decisions as I can make ahead of time, I'm going to do that, because it's less decision-making power I need to have through the week, and less I need to think about when the day actually comes. So those are the few biggest ones. And then I would say the personal one, health, I wouldn't even say is a habit. That's kind of always been something I've done. I've always taken really good care of myself, physically. But the biggest habit that I've done that's helped me sort of sort through my thoughts and really stay true to me has been journaling. I journal every single day. I always give myself at least 30 minutes of thinking time. And by the way, sometimes these journal entries are very uninspiring. It's like, today was crap. I hope today never happens again. Really didn't show up well today. This sucks. Bye. Right? Like that's the journal for the day. And sometimes they're very introspective, and I'm sorting through like what's happening in my head. And I've very consistently done this. And what's been most helpful is I go back to my journals a lot, which I don't think enough people do. But I go back to my journals a lot and I look for patterns. When we're in the pattern, it's hard to see the pattern, but when we can look backwards, we can see patterns. And I've seen a lot of patterns in my life that I've had to break that have helped me. And I've seen a lot of patterns that haven't helped me. And I've seen a lot of patterns that have helped me too. And so when you can start to recognize those patterns, things that you do well, things that you do not do well, it helps you to improve yourself and break the pattern if you need to, and keep pushing on that pattern if it helps you. What strategies have you found most effective for maintaining team cohesion and motivation? Ooh, motivation's sticky, because you cannot motivate people. Sorry to be the bearer of bad news. You will, it does not matter how great you are, you cannot motivate people. I often get called a motivational speaker, and I hate it because that implies to me that y'all come in and feel really good for the 30 minutes that we talk, and then you leave, do nothing about it, and we're like, yeah, that was great. I'm like, well, it wasn't, because you didn't change anything, right? So as opposed to motivation, I'm going to go back to your first part of that question, which is cohesion. The way that you create cohesion, two ways. First, I want you to think about where you feel cohesive, right? Where most people feel cohesion or most people feel connected is when everybody is behaving the same way. We are tribal people, right? Like, we like to be a part of a tribe. That's who we are biologically. And so what you have to do is create a standard for your tribe. You have to create a way of behaving that doesn't need motivation. Let me give you an example. If your way of behaving is that everybody comes in and does their contacts every single day and is scoreboarded every single day or every single week or whatever that looks like, that will create cohesion, and that will also create the motivation that you're looking for. The challenge for most leaders is they come up with these awesome ideas and then they don't hold anybody to it, right? That was the standard on Monday, but it's not the standard on Wednesday, or it's the standard for you and it's not the standard for me, which is a big problem. That's a fundamental character issue, right? And so what I see, the teams that have the best motivation, the teams that have the best cohesion, are those teams that have standards and are held to the standard. They all have agreed to behave a certain way, and everybody shows up behaving that way. And then the other way that you create cohesion is you win. And you call it out when you're winning. Like, you know what I want to be a part of? I want to be a part of the team that walks off the field winning the Super Bowl. You want to know what sucks? Losing the Super Bowl. That sucks. That's a terrible feeling. You don't want to be a part of that team. So I get asked this question all the time. How do you create a great team? I'm like, you'll win. People want to be a part of a winning team. And then the people who are not winners will automatically see themselves out. They just will, right? Like, it's often shared in our organization. I will tell people often, like, you can go and be average, you just can't do it around here. Like, you just don't get to do that here. So if you want to be average, that's okay, but that doesn't exist in this organization. You got to go do that somewhere else, right? So you either have to change your behavior if you want to stay here, or you're going to need to leave. Choice is yours, right? People usually see themselves out, or they will step up their behavior, but you have to create that standard.
I think that one got everybody excited. Wow. It's huge, Nikki. Thank you for sharing that. And I think you're right 100% all the way through. Like, you touched on kind of that motivation versus burnout earlier. A lot of times you'll hear it said as, you lost your passion. How are you keeping this level of intensity all the way through this process? We know it's ups, downs, and everything in between. We know that the journey's not easy. You touched on that as well. Being an entrepreneur and a business owner is hard. So how are you keeping this level of intensity, this type of energy all the way through and continuing to climb the mountains you're climbing?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are sometimes what's the word I'm looking for? I think people sometimes overestimate how much intensity it actually takes. Right? Like, I'm not that intense. And by way of, like, I've had a number of people who have come and shadowed me, and they're always surprised when I say, like, if you're going to come and shadow me, don't just come to my office, come stay at my house. Like, you can literally come live with me. And I've had a number of people inside KW and outside KW come and do that. Like, my husband thinks I'm the weirdest person in the world, but I'm like, yeah, come on over. Like, you can sleep in our guest room, you can come with me to work. Like, they come and shadow my whole day. And without fail, there's a couple of ahas they always have at the end, which is, you're not as intense as we thought you were, and you're pretty boring. Like my life is very boring, and yet what you're seeing is an accumulation of the right habits and the right actions over time. Nobody knew who I was in the world of real estate for like 6 or 7 years. Like I was irrelevant and invisible. And the only thing that you're seeing now is just an accumulation of all of that work that was happening during that time. So I'm not intense all the time, but I do have short bursts of intensity in order to get the priorities done. And what I am is dogged in my clarity and approach that those things need to be done every single day, no matter what, no matter what, no matter what, no matter what. Right. And I don't wait for the motivation, and I don't wait to feel like it. I know what I need to do today because I figured it out yesterday, and I just do it. Right? No excuses. I just get it done. And by the way, if I didn't get it done because I slacked today, or I wasn't feeling motivated today, or I wasn't as intense today, I'm going to make up for it tomorrow. Like I'm just not going to string together a bunch of days of losing. I will stop that pattern, and I will interrupt it, and I will make sure that I catch up. And I think that that's all that people see. And I think especially when I communicate, they see a level of energy and intensity, which I do. I think I have more energy probably than the average. But I've also just learned to do the right things consistently, and I've allowed those to accumulate over time. And I think that the other thing that you have to pay attention to is what you're doing with yourself in order to maintain your energy. Are you sleeping? Right? Like I always laugh when someone comes to me and is like, "Oh yeah, grind all day. I slept 4 hours last night." I'm like, "You're gonna die. Like it's really bad for you. So you should get like a full 8 or 9. Very important." And I do. I'm in bed, tucked safely in bed by 9 p.m. every single night, without fail, like every night. And I move my body every day, and I eat really healthy. Like I am very boring. Very, very. I don't drink. I work out. I eat healthy food. Bed by 9. Very boring. And so I think that that's also where we maintain energy, is by taking care of the thing that is required for us to have energy, which is this body.
We got one more question. I think Mel, you can go ahead and unmute.
Yeah, that's me typing on Mel's laptop here. So so that's super cool, Nikki. And so you mentioned the intensity. It's like maybe you could tell us a little bit about kind of, and I know we're kind of running out of time, but just really quickly, kind of your supports. Because one thing that I find is like, boom, I have this intensity. We got this huge wave going. It's really intense. And now you can't stop because you got this intensity, and now it's gonna kind of hurt you later because you've been going so hard. So if you could maybe tell us, I'm just kind of curious about kind of your team and your supports, that when you hit this intensity, you're able to still, take a step back, having sweet dreams at 9 p.m. and kind of having balance in your life.
I will try to answer. Let me know if I don't. I think that if you're having intensity and it's creating chaos, what you're missing is your driving systems to manage the chaos and understanding what actually created the results. What I'm hearing is like you're driving really hard, creating a bunch of results, and then you're dying under the results. Does that feel right? Okay. So I see this all the time in the world of real estate. And what I would then come back to, like if I was coaching you, I would say, okay, couple very important questions here. Number one, why are we just doing spurts of intensity? Like if you are able to drive this type of result, why are you only doing it in short bursts? Why are we not instead creating a consistent action that creates these results consistently? And then you have the ability to scale those results over time. Right. So if it's, instead of making 10 contacts a day, I'm just going to get everybody on the team in a room and we're going to make 1,500 contacts this week. Well, I'm like, you can do that and then you'll deal with the aftermath. But wouldn't you rather just make 10 a day and then grow your 10 to 15 and 10 to 20 as you're able to manage the results? right? So I would first question if that's the right strategy. But if that's the way you feel like doing it, which by the way, I don't think is necessarily wrong. I think a lot of people need to work in short bursts and then deal with the result. I don't think it's sustainable long term. It's also not a sustainable way to build a business. But if you're going to do that, what I would pay attention to is what breaks, right? What's breaking when I push the pedal this hard? What in the car is shaking when I get over 100 miles an hour? And then I'm going to build a system around that, and then I'm going to punch the gas again. Did I fix that? Because again, the only way to know if you have a hole in your bucket is to fill it up. So if the only way that you know if a system is working or not is to like pump the gas and be super intense and flood it with a bunch of business, that's totally okay. But then you need to solve the problems. Otherwise, it's just insanity. Otherwise, you're doing the same thing over and over and over again, and you're going to be getting the same results. So I would resolve that system, and then I would the next round of I'm going to pump the gas. I would pump it a little bit more, and can it handle a little more? And then I would say, okay, well, instead of going 150 miles an hour with this one push, can I change my 50-mile-an-hour speed on a daily basis to 60 miles an hour? And if I did that, what type of results would it bring me over time? Again, I'm not a huge fan of like, pump the gas and stop, because it's really challenging to get momentum, right? My nickname in the world of like with some of the KW execs is just I'm the juggernaut, right? Like y'all know who the juggernaut is. He's the superhero that if he keeps going straight, he'll just get a bunch of momentum. But if you stop me, I will stop. And most people are that way. Like they need to keep the momentum in order to continue in flow and in order to get the results. But starting and stopping and starting and stopping and starting and stopping is really challenging. So I would just challenge that tactic, and I would say, what's breaking, fix what's breaking, and then continue to stress test as you grow. And instead of doing long bursts of intensity, short bursts every day of intensity, right? Doing 1,500 contacts in 1 week could be the same as doing 10 a day. It just requires the discipline to build the habit.
That's incredible, Nikki. Thank you so much. Brian, thank you for that question. We're gonna kind of switch things up a little bit, Nikki. We usually go into a bit of a breakout room, mastermind, that sort of stuff at this time. Does anyone have any other questions they want to ask before we jump into kind of picking today apart?
I think I'll ask the question that we ask every one of our guests. We truly believe that proximity is power here. And you've done an amazing job where you've inspired and enlightened us. Who do you know that we should invite to our mastermind next?
Ooh.
Your name was given by both Jason Abrams and Jay Papazan. So.
Hang on, let me think. In the KW world, right?
No, doesn't
Anybody?
Anybody.
I would highly recommend, and I can connect you to him. His name's Dan Beer. He's a really good friend of mine. Has sold like $3 billion in real estate with his team. One of the smartest minds in real estate that I've met. And I've learned a ton from him. Highly recommend him. Highly recommend Spring Benson. She's great. In the KW world, if you haven't had Julia Lachey on, I just love her. She's so great. She's so smart, so skilled at communicating, such a wonderful human being. Really love her. Highly recommend her. And if y'all haven't had Wendy Papazan on and talk about wealth building, you should do that too. Jay probably can't recommend his own wife because that's weird, but you should definitely have Wendy on. She's awesome.
That was powerful, Nikki. Thank you so much. Thank you for sharing this time with us. We truly appreciate everything that you've done and the lessons that you've taught us here.
Thank you for having me. Absolute pleasure. I hope to get to connect with some of y'all.
Absolutely.
Nikki, let's on that note, what's the best way for people to connect with you? Do you prefer them to go to your social media, flip you an email?
Yeah, I threw it in the chat. Just I'm on Instagram, the Nikki Miller. I love to connect there. I love when people share like something they learned or used. If it worked, didn't work. It's me. Everyone's like, your assistant messaged me back on your Instagram. I'm like, nobody has access to that. It's just me. So it's actually just me responding. So if you message me, I'll totally respond. And love to hear how this might have helped you or not.
Well, let me ask Nikki, do we have any more time with you? Maybe we can do a live aha while we're
I have
on.
you guys until 9:30 my time, so you have 25 minutes left with me.
Amazing. All right.
You
Well,
gave me a long calendar invite.
I love it. Well, let's take advantage of that, folks. Go ahead. Let's unmute ourselves here. Let's share some ahas. I mean, that was powerful. I'll kind of kick it off. I mean, one of the things I heard you say right away is you sometimes you fall in and out of love with what you're doing, but then tweaking it and making sure that you're focusing on the things that you do love, and that'll help you avoid that burnout piece. So that was one of the big takeaways for me. That was incredible. So thank you for sharing that. But what other ahas were you guys getting out there?
Success is reserved for those who take action. Just go fill that freaking bucket and find out if there's a hole. And if there's a hole, we patch that hole and we continue to fill it. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I had this conversation with my coach the other day. We were having a deep conversation about success and people and life, and he loves Elon Musk, and I don't. I think he's a little crazy. But what I do love about him is that what I think people miss is that, yes, he's a freak genius, like an absolute genius. But NASA would never be able to replicate what Elon is doing, because they would never be willing to crash as many rockets as Elon has crashed. Like, he's just like, he doesn't care. Like, I'll crash them all over the place. And once I understand why they crashed, I'll be able to make a better one. He's willing to fail faster and more often than anybody else. And that is why he's so successful. And I think there's a huge lesson to be learned there.
Love it. Martin, go ahead.
I think that I took note of one key one on my phone. It was to perfect the plan with the imperfect plan. I think that using the word planning, and military officer for 26 years, planning is key. The plan is there to just start. And I think I took that sentence because I'm teaching that. And I don't like business plan neither. I like the business planning, the thinking behind. And the note I take from you is, go test it out. Find out your values and refine your approach and your branding by knowing who you are with authenticity. So those are the key concepts that I took note and I encapsulated for our own teaching. Thank
I
you.
love that. Baby.
Sam, go for it. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry, I'm like so rusty on Zoom lately. Hi, Nikki. Honestly, this is really impactful. Listening to you for the last hour or so. You remind me a lot of myself. Andre and I were kind of chatting in between on the mastermind, and it's great to hear your story. And my aha was you sharing on social media as your almost like journal or diary of who you are, and staying authentic through there, sharing, connecting with who wants to connect with you and who doesn't want to. It doesn't matter. That was really nice to hear, because there is so much unauthentic things on social media and highlight reels, and being able to share like the negatives or things that are just not maybe going right, and connecting, because we all know we're not perfect. And I think, yeah, it was just really impactful, and going to take that to the business that I'm growing on my mat leave as well. So thank you, Nikki.
I love that, of course. And congratulations on your baby.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, listen, y'all, nobody likes perfect people. They suck. Like, you all know that person in your life whose just life is so perfect, and they are always perfect. Like, those people suck. We don't want to be around them. They're not fun. And the more authentic you can be, and the more you can share the journey, the more that not only people resonate with you, but they can connect with you, and the more they'll listen to the good stuff then too. I think this is an often underlooked strategy. You can't be like, don't be negative all the time. That's weird, right? But do share the growth.
Nikki,
Well,
what's the type of sorry, Colin.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this one. Nikki, what's the type of people you like to be in business with? Like, I know you focus on the solo. That's a gap that was always there, and Lead Syndicate and now moved on. I think Lever, you said, has taken that on. But what's the type of agent you look for to get into business with? Are there key indicators that are there?
Have a very specific avatar, but what I will tell you is the thing, it's probably better the things that I'm like not looking for. If they know it all, then they don't need me, right? Like, oh, I've been doing this for 25 years, I know how to do all this. I'm like, great, then go do it. There's a reason you're here with me today. If you know how to do it and you're not doing anything about it, then either you need help or you need the other kind of help, right? And so If they know it all, then there's nothing left for them to learn, and therefore I can't help them. I certainly don't know it all. I feel like every day I learn more. I feel like I know less, right? And so that's something I'm always very, very cognizant of, and I'm also very aware of what they want to build, right? The people who come to us who don't want to do their part in our partnership, it always ends badly for both of us, right? We want someone who understands what we do and understands that it is a partnership in order for them to grow, right? And so those are really the big things. But in regards to like the type of agent, we have all types of agents who have grown their business different ways, who have different personality styles. And I love that. For me, it's just further proof that fundamentals stay the same, but how you implement those fundamentals can be totally different.
You mentioned journaling, and that's something I've struggled with, even though one of my favorite books is Meditation by Marcus Aurelius. And now,
Marcus right there.
oh, of course, of course. What advice do you give for someone who finds it hard to put thoughts on paper? I can record my voice, I can do that, but to go write it down, I find that so challenging.
Just do that then. Like I think people overthink this. Like when I'm writing a speech, I ironically enough, given how much I actually write, when I'm writing a speech, like when I'm getting ready to do a keynote, it's really hard for me to write it because I'm in my head, I'm speaking it, right? And so I use the dictation app on my iPad. It's like been life-changing for me, where I'll start saying something and I'll try a phrase out and I'll say, no, that doesn't feel right. Let's try it this way. And it just records everything I'm saying. And then by the end, I've got a full speech written, right? And so like, don't fight against yourself. If you don't like to write, that's fine. Don't write. Go and voice record yourself and have something that like dictates it. And that way you can go back to it, because it's probably going to be weird for you to listen to yourself all the time. So just have something that writes it down. Don't fight you. That's who you are. Don't fight it.
Any other questions we have out there? Going once, twice.
Just a comment, if I may, and this is not only to you, Nikki, but to the people that are on here, about being average. I'm relatively new to the KW environment, having been an indie brokerage for 12 years. And we built that brokerage on being not average. And to hear you say you can be average, but just not here, resonates so much, because people like Andre that were instrumental in bringing me into KW are so far above average. And I look at the screen here and all these above average people. It's inspiring. Thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure. I think, listen, I think that one of the lessons I wish I had learned a little bit sooner, and I really needed someone to give me permission for, was exactly that like I would feel bad being in places and being like, y'all are a bunch of idiots. Like, I don't want to be here. Like, this is not fun for me. And then I would walk out feeling bad about myself. Like, who do I think I am? Do I think I'm better than them? Or like, what's wrong with you, Nikki? And it wasn't that anything was wrong. It's that I found myself in places where I had outgrown them, or that people weren't on the same journey as me, or that people were fighting for a dream that was much smaller than the dream I was fighting for. And that is not a bad thing, right? That's not a reflection of them. It's also not a reflection of me, right? It's okay to go and find your people and to be in a room and say, like, these just aren't my people, right? And so I would challenge all of you, if you feel that inside of you, just go and find your people. There's nothing wrong with you. I'm never giving anyone permission to not treat them well. We should always treat human beings well. We were all equally valuable. And yet, if those don't feel like your people, that's okay. Just go and find your people, because that will never go away. You cannot force yourself to be comfortable there. And so you need to go and find the people who inspire you and who make you feel like those dreams that you have maybe aren't so crazy, and that you feel like those are that's the more than average that you want to be around, right?
Nikki, I loved when you said, the fundamentals is the same, the noise is just louder now. I think we forget that a lot of times, right? Because there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of activity happening, and a lot of it's fake and whatever they want to say, but the fundamentals haven't changed.
Yeah.
Right. You've been doing this, I think, over 10 years now, a lot longer than that now. And so anything in those fundamentals that you'd say maybe have tweaked a little bit, or is it still business as usual?
Honestly, no. Like listen, y'all. The real estate agent's job, very simple. Your job is to talk to people about real estate. And if you want to sell more real estate, you got to talk to more people about real estate. Like that's the job. That's it. Like that is literally it. And every time I go to an event, every time without fail, somebody will stop me in a hall and the conversation goes like this every time. Hey Nikki, I'm so and so, and I stopped you because nobody's around. And I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, I just wanted to ask, and I promise I won't tell, and nobody's around to hear it. What's the secret to real estate? Like, what's the thing that you're not telling anybody? I'm like, okay, promise you won't tell anybody. And they're like, yeah, I promise. I'm like, have you considered like doing the work? Like, that's it. That's the secret. You need to talk to people about real estate. And if you're not selling enough, you need to go talk to more people about real estate. Like I said, how you tactically implement that has changed. You can meet them in a lot more places. You can do that at scale differently than you've ever been able to do it. But that's still the job.
Beautiful. End us out there, Andre.
All right, folks, anything else? Last call. We're gonna, we want to be honorable to Nikki's time. Nikki, you've been so gracious, giving us even the extra time. I know I'd asked for an hour. Calendar invite was a little longer. Thank you.
I saw what you did there.
I figured if it wasn't, I'd get a message back and you'd say, hey, I can't make it for that long, but like you, I like to push against the walls a little bit. So it worked out. Anything else from the group here? Anything else you folks want to know? Seeing a lot of head shake no. So I think
I have one comment. Look at my face. Oh my God. Nikki, if you can record yourself saying that, just go do it and just talk to people about real estate. I mean, I wish I had this moment recorded, or you need to screen to capture that moment when she says it. It is just so gold. Like, I'm like, oh, thank you so much.
We can make it more complicated than that, but it's not. Any tips on hiring your first admin? Yes, so many. You should definitely take career visioning, talk to your team leader. You should definitely take agent financials, all of that. Make sure you're ready for that. My biggest piece of advice for you, though, is if you are not ready to use the time that you get back wisely, don't hire an admin. The biggest mistake that I see people do when they get leverage is that they don't use the time that they get back wisely. In other words, you have overestimated your time spent in the business, i.e. you think that you need an admin. By the way, I have no idea what your business looks like, so I might be totally off base for you, Ante. So you take this with a grain of salt. But I see people often overestimate how effective they are in their business. They're like, I'm at my max. I'm like, are you? Like, are you really? Are you maxed out on the most important activities? And are you crystal clear on what the admin's going to take off of your plate that has nothing to do with what drives the actual business itself? Because I see people get an admin and one of two things happens. One, they try to pass off the wrong things. Oh, they're going to call through my database. I'm like, no, they are not. No, they are not going to call through your database. That's your job. If they're going to call through your database, you want to know what they're going to do? They're going to build great relationships and they're going to take your database with them. That's what they're going to do. So that's what I would do. That's what any smart person would do. So don't do that. That's your job. Your job is to drive the income in the business. Your job is to drive the things that produce results. That's your job, right? And however you're doing that, lead generation, calling through the database, door knocking, whatever your thing is, right? And then the admin takes off of your plate all the things that matter least, but still matter, right? People hear me say that and say, oh, well, if they don't matter, then I don't need to do them. Like, no, you do. They just don't matter at the expense of what matters most. So you have your admin to take those things off of your plate, get crystal clear that they are not touching anything that's income producing. And then you are to use the time that you get back from not having to do those things anymore in order to drive more of what produces income in the business to make up for having the admin. And if you are not ready to do that, just don't hire them.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Absolute facts there, Nikki. Thank you so much. All right, folks, we're going to close it out. Again, it's been another exciting, riveting, Bigger Life Mastermind. Nikki, you've been absolutely incredible. The recommendation did not disappoint. The text messages are coming in, the social media content's coming in, and people were absolutely blown away. So thank you so much for sharing. We're so excited that you were here. Guys, next month, we're going to have another heavy hitter. Again, we're not going to tell you up front. You just got to keep an eye on the email and the communication and make sure that that happens. But Nikki, you've been an absolute pleasure to have on, and we are so grateful for you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure, guys. Truly. Thanks for having me.
Of course. Thank you.